And the first speaker is Dave. Dave Moxham is the Deputy General Secretary for the STUC, and he was a member of the Just Transition Commission. So Dave, thanks very much for being with us, and please address the conference. Dave, you're muted.
That was a bad start. Sorry, folks. I was just saying that I'm aware that there's an imperative not to speak for too long. There's so many things that I could cover here, but I am going to try and stick to my 10 minutes. What I want to do is spend a couple of minutes talking about some of the challenges that we face with respect to just transition in Scotland, but then maybe turn partly to some of the recommendations of the Just Transition Commission. I guess a bit like Lang Banks, who many of you will heard from this morning. Also turn to some of the things we need to build on some of those recommendations. I'm going to start, and with apologies to people who've heard this before, by telling folk that from my window here I can see the venue, which will be the main centre for the COP in a couple of months' time. And for those of you who don't know the Glasgow geography, that runs down the side of the River Clyde. And on Sunday, I took a trip on, and this is slightly ironic, I suppose, the world's last functioning paddle steamer down the Clyde from just opposite where the COP will be into where the Clyde opens into its lower reaches. And as you do that trip, the first thing you realise, of course, is the massive level of industrialisation that Glasgow has seen. On the Upper Clyde, there's two shipbuilders left, and they're totally taken up just now with the construction of Type 26 destroyers for the UK Navy. When George V Dock, which is now part of Clyde Port Authority, and it's absolutely stacked full at the moment with wind turbines. None of those wind turbines have been manufactured in Scotland. The only wind turbine manufacturer in Scotland is mothballed. So the country, which has 10%, a full 10% of the installed wind capacity across Europe, even with less than 1% of its population, is manufacturing no wind turbines, onshore wind turbines in Scotland at all. And as you travel a bit further down on that trip, you come to the Clyde's last shipbuilder. It's only a Lower Clyde shipbuilder, Ferguson's, which was saved from administration in 2014 by the Scottish government, and still continues to have major problems in terms of delivering much needed ferries for our connectivity across Scotland. So it's not a pretty picture in what we might describe as the broad energy and construction sector. Yeah, that is actually the sector that has achieved most of our emissions reductions over the last decade. If we look at two other key areas, in transport and in building emissions and heat, you'll find that the picture in terms of emissions reductions is far, far worse. And the same city that I'm talking about, and many other cities across Scotland, at the time that we're failing on heat emissions, has the highest levels of fuel poverty of almost any place, almost any country in Europe. And we have a transport network, particularly a bus network, which is fragmented and which doesn't serve the needs of the population and doesn't offer the options that are required to encourage people to move to less carbon intensive forms of transport. So we face enormous challenges in the period ahead. I guess it's really important, and I'm sure I'm just underlining what other people have said, that the STUC's attitude towards a just transition in Scotland is not that we are in the middle of a just transition, but that we're hoping to move out of an unjust transition into a just transition in the next period ahead. And that just transition has to move us to a situation where of only 40,000 direct and indirect jobs in the low carbon and renewable sector, very, very few of them are in the construction phase. In fact, more than half of the jobs that are quoted as being part of our low carbon job complement in Scotland remain in nuclear and remain in business advisory services. Literally a handful of thousands of jobs currently in the sectors that we need. So what do we need to challenge that? The first thing, and referring back to the Just Transition Commission's report, quite clearly we need an economy-wide approach. The Just Transition Commission proposed that the responsibility for what we would imagine to be a new economic and industrial strategy based around just transition should have a high-level cabinet responsibility. That hasn't quite come to pass yet, but we need an industrial and an economic strategy that covers every sector of Scotland. And this needs to be made up of a range of sectoral and national just transition plans. And what that means is that we need a plan for energy, we need a plan for transport, we need a plan for retail, we need a plan across all of the sectors where fundamentally, and this is another Just Transition Commission recommendation, workers and communities are at the heart of that. So there should be no just transition plan in any sector of the economy where those people don't have an equal seat at the table. And underneath these sectoral plans, we need the big players, particularly the big employers in energy and transport and in other key sectors to be responsible for producing their own just transition plan, again in conjunction with their workforce with a full seat at the table. And these plans should be absolutely necessary, in fact mandatory, for any company that wants any assistance from the Scottish Government, whether financial or in terms of planning or in terms of other necessary logistics. So we need to move to an absolute mandation of a national mission for planning, where the Scottish Government takes primary responsibility and has asks of everybody throughout the sector and throughout the areas of delivery. So this is a vision which has far more planning and far more public control as its main driving force, and that will require public sector investment. We cannot, as has been said earlier, rely on private sector investment to deliver us to the next stage. Where there is private sector investment, of course, we want to attach a conditionality to that. But the public sector is going to need to step up in investment terms, and it's going to need to look at progressive financing, which is to say financing which is based upon the ability to pay, and that's going to have a message medium term for taxation and revenue raising too. And fundamentally, if the Scottish Government is involved in this macro planning function, which is absolutely vital, if it's involved in leveraging, but also introducing new financing from the public sector, then the corollary to that is that it has, as Sean spoke about earlier, it has to take a significant strategic role through public ownership itself. So we want to see recommendations revived around the creation of a Scottish energy company, which is more than just a retail company. We need, as Ros Freya spoke about earlier, and we'll be speaking about later in our breakout sessions, the renationalisation and municipalisation of bus transport. We need to take advantage of the fact that we've already won the support for bringing ScotRail back into public ownership. And we need to look at the potential for the creation of a national construction company as well, so that we have the key pillars of the necessary delivery of the industrial strategy that we spoke about earlier in the hands of the public sector going forward. So these may sound, I guess, at one level to be relatively ambitious policies and strategies, but in our view, they're the only strategies which are going to empower the Scottish Government, the Scottish people to take control of the just transition agenda in a way that will actually deliver meaningfully both for the workers and for the communities of Scotland. I'll leave it there, Stephen.